Hey, what's up, Lightbolt Joe here. Today we're going to discuss the iconic cult classic film, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. So this came out in 1982. Amy Heckerling is the director of this. Cameron Crowe is the screenplay writer of this, based on his actual book. So what's cool about this is that this is a teen comedy film which came out in 82. Not many female directors were doing comedy films back then, so this was a big thing to have then a female director attached to this project, with then the writer of the actual book doing the screenplay for his own book. So that's really cool because not many creators get to actually work on an adaptation of their work. So the fact that he wrote the book and Cameron got to write the screenplay for it, having then Amy direct it, it's a duality of perspective from different genders within regards to kids being kids, teens being teens, sex, drugs, and rock and roll in high school kind of a thing, right? So you had Amy's influence mixed in with Cameron's influence, Amy's influence on certain aspects, Cameron's influence on certain aspects, and it worked so well. This is what a partnership is supposed to look like. This is what the different perspectives coming together meant, mixing of worlds coming together. It was very important to see that. And what I find very interesting is that the executives, whoever produced this, weren't originally happy with how it turned out. That one of them like left the room during certain scenes or something like that, and like it was because it was just so over the top or things of that nature. But it did so well in regards to audience that they actually didn't want to wide release it. They only wanted to just keep it in Southern California where it was filmed, where it was produced. Sherman Oaks Galleria was a massive mall which came out in the 80s, in Sherman Oaks, California, where this was filmed. A lot of this was filmed at that mall, which is a gorgeous 80s mall, which no longer exists. They did a heavy reconstruction on that after an earthquake in the 90s, and then reopened it in '02 as like an open air galleria kind of a thing, like an outside mall, which they filmed then at for 2011's Crazy Stupid Love. That's your fun facts of malls. I love my mall history. Anyway, this was supposed to only be a Southern California release, but then they released it worldwide, not worldwide, wide release in the States, and it became a massive hit on the East Coast. What's also cool about this is the cultural significance, specifically with the Jeff Spicoli character, because he was wearing Vans. Sean Penn's character of Jeff Spicoli was wearing Vans, checkerboard Vans. And Vans, the Van Duren brothers started the Vans company in Southern California back in 1969. And it was a very, local scene for the waffle print on the bottom of the shoe, and you slip on shoe and you get off your board and you slip on your Vans and you're good to go for the day, right? Skating, surfing shoes. You should not be surfing with Vans, but it's that aesthetic, that SoCal aesthetic. So with Jeff Spicoli wearing Vans and having the scene of him, taking the Vans out of the box and like smacking his head with it, after he's, smoking and he's talking to his friend on the phone, like that's a big iconic moment. That's a big iconic scene. And him wearing Vans throughout the show, the film, is another important thing. So Vans then had massive distribution requests after this film because all the teens wanted Vans after that. So it's just really cool seeing that product placement of a project then elevates the product, because everybody wants what the character has. It's cool. It's cool when that happens. It's cool how cultural aspects work. It's cool how see, memes and GIFs weren't a thing back then, obviously, but it's cool how word of mouth helps bring about, oh, have you seen this movie? You should see this movie. This character's wearing that shoe. You would like that shoe. And then you go see the movie and you see that shoe and you want that shoe. So you have to figure out how the hell to get that shoe if that shoe is only available in California and you live in New York. It was a thing. So it's pretty neat having then the availability that you can get the shoe because it's been so successful within regards to the need, the wants, the request, the demand. So then there's going to be the massive distribution. And here we are now. Vans is one of the top selling shoe companies in 2024. So it's cool. It's cool seeing how the progress of cultural relevance happens within regards to a teenage film. Hour and a half long, as all films should be. Starts out the first day at school. Various ages of characters. Most of them are sophomores, some are juniors, some are seniors of the main cast. But then it's the year, the school year, because end at the end, last night dance or something like that, end of school dance, and they're all just partying and having a great time. This is a Christmas film. Massive Christmas moments in this. Merry Christmas to all. Specifically within regards to the mall shopping, holiday shopping, in regards to decorations on houses, not specifically celebrating Christmas Day itself, but like the aesthetic of Christmas. This film is very aesthetic. And they didn't really use that word back then, but we use that word now. 80s aesthetic, cultural relevance of that particular area aesthetic, representation of slang term, representation of clothing, representation of social interaction, representation of the technology that they had at the time as well, representation of the automobiles that they had at the time. You don't see one scrap of plastic on these cars. All these cars are all metal from the late 70s to, 60s up to 81 when this was filmed. This came out in 82. It's a sense of grit that you don't see on the road anymore. Everything is now plastic, and it's frustrating when any fender bender just shatters everything because it's all plastic. It's frustrating. Aside from that, this is very heavy in regards to adult content. And what's interesting about this, and which brings me back to my point about the creator Cameron and the director Amy, is that the duality that the two worked very well together, because it's not portrayed as crude adult humor, adult content. It's just this is happening. Kids get older. Kids want to sleep with each other. What happens next? Teenagers are getting pregnant. What happens next? There's a whole abortion conversation that is now referenced in various films moving forward. You don't want to be, what's Mike's last name's character? Whatever his last name is, they use that as the verb. You don't want to blank, which was referencing when you accidentally get your girlfriend pregnant and you're going to the clinic, or she asks you to bring her to the clinic. Don't be that character and just leave her there to fend for herself. What is the name of that character? Because they specifically use that as a reference in 2012's Bachelorette, between a conversation between various characters. And then I've seen that in other movies as well. It's Damone. D-A-M-O-N-E. There we go. Mike Damone. Don't be a Damone. That's awesome. How 40 years later, and people can still use that as a verb. Don't be a this. Don't do that. Don't Damone. Don't Damone would be the verb. Adjective, really, is the description. Don't be a. It's impressive how culturally significant this film is. It's impressive how adult this film was. It's impressive how deep the film is with regards to certain conversations. Friends, family, love, sex, drugs, rock and roll, school, education, slacking, the works. This is a film which doesn't hide anything. Everything is all cards are on the table. You want to talk about something? We're going to talk about something. You want to flirt around with this girl? You flirt around with that girl. You want to sleep with that boy? You sleep with that boy. It's very interesting having that teen dynamic because it feels genuine. It feels authentic. It feels like you're literally at a high school and this is the conversations that the kids are having at lunch. It's impressive. And I think that's how Cameron wrote his book. I think he undercovered a high school or something like that and was just listening, and certain characters were saying actual things that he heard. So it brings a sense of authenticity, which you don't normally see in a film about teenagers. These people were all between 18 to 24, I want to say, give or take, playing 16 to 18 respectively. So they're all young actors playing teenagers, and that's fine, especially in regards to the adult content. Obviously, you're not going to have a teenager doing adult content for a film. So that was the legality of it. But it was all believable. These individuals felt like they were still in high school. They still had that wit. Obviously, they're amazing, talented individuals. That's why they were chosen. I didn't feel anyone dragged on character. I didn't feel lost at any point. The story is very straightforward. It still withholds the test of time. What I love about this is that a couple of years back, this actually was submitted into the Library of Congress's registry or something like that, film registry for culturally significance or aesthetically influence on culture, something like that. And back then, I didn't understand why this would be added to that registry. I haven't seen this film in like 15 years, probably a long time. Um, when I was younger, obviously I laughed at the jokes and ha ha ha, he said this and ha ha ha, she took her top off, right? That's the purpose of me being a teenage male and laughing at these things, as that's the catering of entertainment at that point. Things are much different now, but I didn't get the main cultural relevance, significance, aesthetic of it until now. Now that I've studied film for quite some time, now that I've been understanding how story progresses in regards to the three acts, now that I understand how certain character development happens, now I understand in regards to mall aesthetic. I have to sometimes watch dead mall videos just to fall asleep. That liminal space of that nostalgia is just glorious and mesmerizing, and it's unfortunate that these places are being destroyed because nobody's going there anymore. It's culturally significant to that time period. That's where you hung out. That was social media. Love it. I love seeing real world people do real world stuff in the background. So many wide shot scenes. You obviously have real world people doing their things. You have real world people driving on the street and doing this and doing that. Love it. Absolutely love it. Reminding me a lot of Miracle on 34th Street in the sense of they put a camera on a float. This is back in the 30s. They put a camera on a float for the parade and filmed the crowd. And that was just a crowd in New York in the 30s watching, celebrating Thanksgiving together. That's a timepiece. Those weren't actors. That was just a real crowd that they filmed and then put to screen. And it's a time capsule. It's time capsule of culture. It's time capsule of moments. 1930 what was Miracle on 34th Street, whatever year that was, or 40 something. I don't remember, whatever year that was, late 30s, early 40s, versus this, 1982, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. It's a timepiece. It's a cultural piece. There's one shot where a car is just zipping by, kind of a thing. I think Stacy and Ron were first going to the point, and he like zooms past the McDonald's, and I'm like, oh my God, that's original Arches. But it's one of those blink and you miss it things. Like that McDonald's doesn't exist anymore because all the McDonald's are now boxes and gray and corporate nonsense. They sucked all the fun out of everything. We still love the toys, but that McDonald's will never look that way ever again. That McDonald's doesn't look that way ever again. So it's a timepiece. It's a time period. It's just a wonderful time capsule of a film which still has relevance in conversation and plot point and storyline all these years later. And we are watching Clueless next, specifically because Amy Heckerling is the director of Fast Times and Clueless. What's also interesting is that both movies actually had very short-lived TV series with the same universe, but like different actors played different characters, kind of thing. Characters were played by different actors. That's what I was trying to say. I don't know where to find these shows. Eventually, we'll watch them at some point. They're not technically on my list right now. We're just doing a general 90-minute movie list, if you will. Clueless is a little longer, but we're definitely going to watch it because Amy does an incredible job directing this. And I remember loving Clueless back in the day. And again, that's another film I haven't seen in like 15 years. So we're going to watch Clueless. We're going to laugh our asses off. We're going to enjoy the cultural significance of Claire in the 90s being that character, being that clueless character. Fast Times at Ridgemont High, incredibly culturally significant film that I'm sure a lot of film buffs have done dissertations on. I'm sure a lot of history professors have done dissertations on as well. Interesting. That's what I'm starting to feel. I'm starting to feel like I'm doing thesis and dissertations in regards to certain projects. But it is what it is. You learn stuff. You think of stuff. In the words of Sir Isaac Newton, what we know is a drop. What we don't know is an ocean. On to the next review. Mucho mahalo.